Hi guys, this is Year 80, here doing the September stitching tag that was started by Shell Stitch 67, I believe. Yeah, so I thought I'd do this little tag before I did my whip and stash update videos. So here goes. The first question was, what is your favourite DMC colour? That's quite a difficult one because I think the best way to deal with that is I have a favourite colour like per project that I'm working on. There'll be one that I think, oh, that's so lovely, because even as me as a person, I wouldn't actually know what my favourite colour was. I can tell what colours I use more of, but you know. So based on that principle, the colour, my favourite DMC colour that I'm using at the moment in my projects would have to be DMC 502, which is like, it's a lovely sage green colour, would be the best way to describe it. But I also like the coverage of it. I don't understand why that looks different compared to all the other DMCs I'm using on that project, but for some reason I just feel that it does. So for that reason, for my current project, I'd have to say that my favourite colour is DMC 502. The next question: do you stitch for Christmas or winter, and if so, have you started? I haven't done in the past. I am considering it now. There's particularly for presents, I think it's a good idea, but there's particularly a Christmas stocking that I really like, that Just Nan has chart, where you can actually, if you buy the other Just Nan angels, which I do have, you can swap them out in the Christmas stocking. And I have a young niece that I just think it would be nice to maybe make her a gift, also because they live abroad, so we can't sort of just go out and buy her toys and things like that because they've got to get them back, and that's a bit of a pain. So whereas if I make her the stocking, you can easily fold it up and take it back on the plane. So yeah, I don't buy it for a rule, but I'm definitely leading towards that way. So then do you like to read, and if so, what do you read? I do like to read, but I don't I don't read, obviously I can't read and cross stitch at the same time, and my cross stitching is taking over a lot more recently, so I haven't picked up a book in a long time, but I do as a rule love to read. So technically my last book would be it's part of a series, and they're by Jim Butcher, and it's called the Dresden Files. I'm on book 5, which is Death Mask. Like I said, I mean that it's not a new release, they've been out for a while. It would come under the bracket of sort of fantasy fiction stroke sci-fi. It's not sci-fi, it's fantasy fiction, but sometimes that's how it's grouped. But yeah, I tend to, as a rule, read books that aren't necessarily realistic, because if I'm going to read, I tend to like to escape reality. So obviously the most famous ones, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, yeah, I've read those. So they're the genre I'd sort of go into. It can be a bit of a touch and go one, because sometimes they can be really pants in that genre, but then there's other times that they blow your mind and they're amazing. And I particularly like the Jim Butcher books because they're based in America, but they're based in what would be recently modern times, but it's like two different worlds that are coexisting, and one world doesn't even realise the other world exists. and the other world spends most of its time trying to make sure that this world doesn't realise it exists. And it's about a guy called Harry Dresden, who's a PI, a private investigator, but he's a wizard. So he's a private investigator for more of the magical, unexplained things, because he's actually part of that element, as opposed to sort of the X-Files spin on things, where obviously they are human beings looking into things that aren't possibly human. He actually, confusingly, isn't particularly just human, but he deals with things that affect the human world and obviously tries to hide it. In that sense, it's probably the best way to kind of sum it up. But he has quite the author, Jim Butcher, has really wicked sense of humour. Quite dry, that appeals to me. I've got quite a dry sense of humour, so obviously more often than not, I think the lovely Ray Mackenzie was saying, books that make you physically cry or laugh out loud and can actually evoke that feeling just through words, generally is the good sign that you found the author for you, even if they're not necessarily award-winning authors or have got all these accolades. If that author is doing it for you, then they're the people you should be reading, because that's what's touching you more. So yeah, and I find Jim Butcher can make me grin and laugh because I can relate to his sense of humour in that sense. The next question: 3 random facts about yourself. Right. This was quite difficult actually, because if you probably speak to my family and friends, quite a random sort of person. So to just narrow it down to 3. So I thought, well, okay, reasonably normal facts about myself. The first fact I chose is the house that I'm currently filming in, where I currently live with my husband. We, 4 years ago, we built this from scratch. 4 or 5 years ago. It had walls and it had a roof, but that was about it. When people say fixer-upper, they wasn't looking at our property. Our property needed floors replacing, ceilings replacing. It never had central heating, which if you live in the UK is a must. So it never even had that, so that the electrics had to be completely done. The water had to be checked because it was probably not much had changed since it had been put in, which I think was around down this road. I'm not 100% sure. I know the house is 1900 built, so it is, in fairness, 114 years old. So it is a Victorian property. But yeah, this was a massive undertaking, and it was our first home together, and luckily we didn't have to live in it when we was fixing it up, because that was the point. We'd never be able to do this again, because any property that we chose to move from here, we'd have to be able to live in it and do it up, and this was so bad you couldn't live in it and do it up. You had to be able to go and live somewhere else, just of an evening or whatever. So yeah, we spent, and to be fair, we did actually, I did project manage with certain skilled workers, so things like the plasterer and the tiler, I project managed those myself. But to be fair on my husband and his dad, they pretty much did everything else. They replaced the floors, the ceilings. It was it took a year before we could live in it, so it was a labour of love. And so for that reason, although it can be quite small and tiny because it's a class as a 2 up 2 down Victorian workers cottage, I think it would be quite difficult for us to move from, because it really is, we've put our stamp on it. So yeah, so that's a random fact. Second one, I have a A-level and certificate in archaeology. In the UK there's no money in archaeology. There is in the teaching side, and possibly if you went into museum curator or to work in a museum in that sense, those jobs don't come up readily. There's lots of voluntary work for archaeology, but unfortunately at some point you need money. So yeah, so I don't currently do that, but I am trained to do that. Third random fact, I have 4 tattoos. I'm not adverse to tattoos. I like tattoos, obviously. I have 4. I don't regret any of them. They represent different aspects at different times of my life. So I made sure that when I made the decision to when I would have one, and I made the decision of what I was going to have, that it would be very representative of what I was having it for. So that therefore it made it easier, because then I was never going to regret it, because it was always going to be a reason, something. So yeah, obviously I'm not going to show you all of them, but you may have spotted some of them. This is the second one I ever had, which is like a ivy vine. So I've had an elastic band around my hand, but yeah. So a lot of people think this is henna, so I don't even realise it's a tattoo. And I've got my watch over my other one. It's for my daughter, which is a butterfly. Oh. I can't get that, that's the wrong angle, isn't it? Because my daughter is obsessed with butterflies. She loves anything to do with butterflies, so I've got that. And I have one on the back of my neck and one on my back, my lower back. I probably won't get any more. Never say never, but I probably won't get any more, because sometimes it's appropriate to cover them up, and for me, and so I need to be able to put them in places where I could, if I was wearing an evening dress, say, that I could actually cover them up. My hair doesn't suit me really short, so the one on the back of my neck you're not likely to see, and the ones on my wrist, well, that's what bracelets are for, and the one on my back, well, I haven't really got the figure to be having something that low, be wearing something that low as an evening dress. So yeah, you wouldn't necessarily see that either. So yeah, for that reason, I haven't got anywhere else that you could notice. But that's my personal choice. I haven't got a problem with seeing other people's tattoos, or I think it's an expression of people's individuality and things like that. And I think that's cool, because you get to see that visually, other than just the way they dress or whatever. So yeah, I think that's quite nice, but that's my personal thing. So they're my 3 random facts. So thanks again for everyone that's watching in the floss tube community, and any new people that want to join, get interested, get involved in the floss tube cross stitch community. That would be absolutely great. It's become a little bit of a ritual that every morning and evening, when I sit down to chill, if I've got my cup of coffee before I go to work or before I leave to go to bed, I always check, because I want to catch up. I like to just see the updates and things like that. So right, okay guys, that's my September stitching tag, and hopefully the next one that I'm going to be putting up will be my whip and a small stash haul. But yeah, okay, keep stitching. Bye bye.